Have you ever found yourself standing in a museum just staring at a canvas that's, well, a bunch of splatters and shapes, and you're thinking, my kid could do that? Yeah, we've all been there. Abstract art is one of those things that people either love or love to hate. But what if that gut reaction you have, whether it's confusion or anger or even a sense of wonder, is actually part of this really fascinating process happening inside your brain? Today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at the surprising science of what's really going on when you look at abstract art.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle the abstract art puzzle itself. Why it gets such a strong reaction from people. Then we'll unpack this really cool concept called psychological distance. After that, the story takes a wild turn with a little something about the CIA and the Cold War. From there, we'll dive into the actual science of how our brains decide what's beautiful. And finally, we're going to connect all those dots and see what your brain is truly doing when it's on art.
So let's just start with that big central question. How is it that a painting with absolutely no recognizable objects, no people, no houses, just color and shape, can make us feel such powerful emotions? It's a real puzzle, and it's one that's had people scratching their heads for more than 100 years.
And let's be real, for a lot of us, the first reaction is just pure skepticism. I mean, this comment from a Reddit thread pretty much nails a super common feeling. It can feel like it has nothing to do with skill or reality, and maybe, just maybe, feels a little bit like a scam.
And that frustration can get even more pointed. As one Reddit user put it, it can feel like the art world is just trying to pull a fast one on everybody. Trying to convince us that there's some profound meaning in something that, to be honest, looks like a whole lot of nothing. It goes beyond just not liking it, it's a feeling of total rejection.
But this is where things get really interesting. What if we're asking the wrong question? What if this kind of art isn't about what it is, but about what it does to the way we think? What if these canvases are actually tools, specifically designed to shift our brains into a different gear? To get that, we need our first big idea.
So, the first piece of our puzzle is a concept from social psychology called psychological distance. Now, I know that sounds super academic, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's all about making a mental shift, moving away from the nitty-gritty concrete details of right here, right now, and toward bigger, broader, more abstract ideas.
Here's the key. When your brain isn't busy trying to identify, say, a tree or a face or a building in a painting, it's free. It's free to just wander around. It starts looking for patterns, making wider connections, and thinking about huge concepts like chaos or peace or energy, instead of just a boat on a lake.
And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you've got representational art, a painting of a person or a landscape. Your brain goes into what you could call mental closeness mode. You're zeroing in on details. Wow, look at the brushwork on that flower. But on the right, with abstract art, you get pushed into psychological distance. You stop looking at a specific thing and you start thinking about a big idea. And this shift, it's not an accident. In fact, it was once used as a strategic weapon.
So believe it or not, this unique power of abstract art, this ability to make us think differently, was not lost on the intelligence community. Seriously, during the peak of the Cold War, the CIA looked at the work of artists like Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko, and they didn't just see paints on a canvas. They saw a weapon.
Okay, so let's just lay out the history here. Right after World War II, the Soviet Union was pushing this style called socialist realism. It was super rigid, very literal, and basically just state propaganda. Well, the CIA saw a massive opportunity. They secretly started funding and promoting American abstract expressionism all over the globe. The whole point was to create this huge contrast, Soviet control versus American freedom. And the strategy, as a Reddit user in that discussion pointed out, was kind of genius. This art, just by its very nature, it just screams individualism, chaos, and pure innovation. It was the absolute perfect cultural weapon. It projected this image of America as a free-thinking, cutting-edge society, which was a direct slap in the face to the idea that America was culturally backward.
And get this, the CIA's interest wasn't just for show, for propaganda to use on other countries. This quote shows that they actually use abstract art for their own internal training. The whole idea is that by forcing analysts to find meaning in a messy, nonlinear, abstract image, it literally trains their brains to think more creatively when they're trying to solve incredibly complex, real-world problems. It is a direct application of using art to spark innovative thinking.
Okay, so we know abstract art can actually shift our mindset. But what is happening on that deeper emotional level? right? How do we get from a canvas of colors to a genuine feeling of joy or tension? For that answer, we've got to turn to a scientific paper that breaks down the very act of how we judge things aesthetically.
And what's so interesting is that to get to the bottom of how we process really challenging visual art, these researchers used a totally different medium, really difficult contemporary music. But the principle is exactly the same. When you're hit with something that doesn't follow the rules you expect, your brain has to work way harder. And that's when the connection between your thoughts and your feelings becomes crystal clear.
So, the study found that our judgment of beauty or value isn't just one single feeling. Nope, it's a mix of at least 3 different factors. You can almost think of them as different lenses that our brain uses to size up what it's experiencing. Let's break each one of them down.
First up, we have analytical semantic value. This is your thinking brain kicking into gear. It's the part of you that asks questions like, is this original? Is this skillfully done? Is there some deeper meaning I'm missing here? This is all about cognitive engagement. Your brain is looking for an intellectual puzzle to solve. Next, you've got traditional aesthetic value. This is your feeling brain, your pure gut reaction. It works with those classic emotional ideas. Is this beautiful? Is it sublime? Or, on the flip side, is it just ugly and distasteful? This is that immediate, almost primal response that connects to our deepest ideas of what's pleasing to us.
And finally, there's typicality value. I like to think of this as your brain's internal filing cabinet. It's constantly checking, does this fit my idea of what art is supposed to look like? Is this typical for this kind of thing? This is where our expectations live. And it totally explains why art that breaks all the rules can feel so jarring at first.
Okay, so let's put all of this together now. We've got psychological distance, we've got the CIA's creative thinking exercises, and we've got these 3 different ways our brain judges art. So how does it all combine to create that unique experience you have when you're standing in front of a painting?
Well, it happens kind of like this. First, you encounter the challenging art. That might trigger a really raw, immediate feeling, maybe confusion, maybe even tension. But then almost instantly, your cognitive brain jumps in. You start running through those judgments we just talked about. And this is the magic step. Those thoughts actively change your initial feeling, transforming it into something way more complex and nuanced, like fascination or even joy. And the study found direct connections. For instance, when people found high analytical value, meaning they thought the piece was original and interesting, they actually reported feeling more joy. When they found it beautiful, high traditional aesthetic value, they felt less tension. And when it met their expectations, high typicality, it just lowered their overall negative feelings. Your thoughts are literally turning the dials on your emotions.
And this all leads us to the single biggest takeaway from this whole thing. Judging a piece of art isn't just you passively reporting a feeling that's already there. It is an active part of creating the feeling itself. By engaging your mind, by asking, is this original? Or what's the artist trying to get at here? You are literally giving yourself the power to transform that initial moment of confusion into a much richer experience of fascination and maybe even understanding.
So, I'll just leave you with this final thought. The next time you're face to face with a canvas that seems to make no sense at all, maybe the question to ask isn't, what am I supposed to be looking at? Maybe the real question is, what kind of thinking is this piece of art trying to get me to do? You're not just looking at a painting, you're actually taking part in a psychological exercise. And just knowing that, well, that might just change everything.